2014. You are here as learners and as influencers. And I think one thing that I hope we all share is the idea that the future of healthcare has its best days ahead of it, not its worst. There's far too much talk going on right now about the peril of healthcare and the challenges that it faces. But my fundamental belief is that I'm here today to tell you its very best days are ahead. We're here today with passionate innovators. We're here with committed healers, and we're here with the energetic business leaders who have ideas to share with us. And they want to transform healthcare in an interesting way as well. And we are here today because we are also those people. One of the aims of Health Pitch is to come together with an attitude of optimism and determination to listen to those ideas and to determine how we engage them in our communities of healing and our communities of business. The themes of Health Pitch this year are efficiency, behavioral health, and developing. Healthcare is poised to radically change its efficiency. Technology is advancing. Sensors are becoming more and more prevalent in our environment. On the topic of behavioral health, we'll talk about that some more, and you're going to hear from some great speakers on that. But there's a stigma that is attached to behavioral health, and part of the process is about driving that stigma out of the view we have of behavioral health. And finally, the idea that we are constantly developing, constantly becoming better and learning continuously. So let's begin with efficiency. Sensing technology is virtually ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's in our phones, our smartphones, it's in our homes, and it's in the places that we visit. It's even in our cars. And its objective is to change the experience that we're having as we live and as we experience the environments that we enter in. Even Disney has this incredible infusion of sensor technology in its parks. But we're not quite there yet. All that's going on with technology is taking some time. But what we're finding out, this goes back to 2010, and it really hasn't changed up until today, is that we find through the Healthcare Management Council a time study that was done that said nurses are spending 35% of their time doing charting and documentation. And they're spending 19% of their time locating supplies and materials. Even today, as we look at time studies, we see that 30% of the time only remains for the delivery of face-to-face healthcare, the time that people have to heal face-to-face. And healing can only happen in that environment. It has to be between a healer who's fully present and not distracted by things like searching for supplies. This quotation, in the ordinary hospital, the nurses make many useless steps. More of their time is spent in walking than in caring for the patient. Sounds like a fairly contemporary quotation, but that quotation belongs to Henry Ford. He made it in 1922 in his book entitled My Work and Life. And in that book, he talks about his purchase of the Detroit General Hospital, which he went on to rename the Henry Ford Hospital. He knew 95 years ago, as he looked at what was happening in that hospital, that efficiency in the care and the delivery in healthcare was key to the environment. And here we are 95 years later talking about it. But he was optimistic that his changes would sweep through healthcare. He also is known for stating that success is purely a matter of management and mathematics. The same kind of management which permits a factory to give the fullest service will permit a hospital to give the fullest service, and at a price so low to be within the reach of anyone. Time has passed, time has marched on, and all kinds of things from behavioral issues to politics to the rising cost of healthcare have stood in the way of this particular aim that he had. But if only changes were as simple as management and mathematics and logic, we'd be much further along. But don't be dismayed. There's much that can be done, and we're about to hear about those ideas today. On the topic of behavioral health, I want to talk a little bit about what you're going to hear today. And it starts with a statistic that's fairly difficult to grapple with, and it's that 1 in 4 adults, or approximately 61.5 million Americans, are experiencing mental illness in a given year. There's a stigma that's attached to that conversation in virtually every community throughout the country. One of the most studied of men, about whom 16,000 books have been written, lived in a time when the stigma was far less. He suffered from a severe form of depression, or at least what we would call depression today. At the time, it was referred to as melancholy. I was recently on a trip with my family, with my wife and my 3 children, and what we did together was to go to Springfield, Illinois. We actually got to experience time in the environment where Lincoln was, and this is the man about whom we're talking. Looks like we've lost our slides here. But about him it was said he was always the most depressed person they've ever seen. It's always this radical gloom that they were shocked by. People saw it in him, they understood what was happening, people surrounded him, and there wasn't a stigma that was attached to that. But even though he was viewed as one of the most depressed people they'd ever seen, he went on to do great things, and there was great hope. He learned to integrate, he learned to adapt his challenge to his environment, and there wasn't a stigma that was associated with it. He was also the man that said, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or we can rejoice because thorn bushes have roses. Today you're going to hear from those who have professionally worked with behavioral health, people who have been personally impacted in amazing ways. They're going to share their understanding of this particular world with you and see what's happened in the last 150 years of behavioral health. But the North Dakota Suicide Prevention Program, I think, says it very well, and that's with help comes hope. So finally, on the topic of developing, the third theme for today. It took 12 long years to isolate radium, and it led to the coining of the term radioactive. The pioneer was a woman. She was somebody who was unique for the newness of what she was doing in her field. She worked during a great age of innovation, but the thing was, women weren't really considered to be able to work in objective science at the time. They were considered too sentimental. So she worked against those odds. But before she was a scientist, she grew up in a home where her mother died at 10. She lived in Poland at a time when Russia occupied it. Her father was a teacher. They encouraged her curiosity. And what she took an interest in was literature, mathematics, science, physics, and she excelled in all of them. She attended a university that was called the Floating University because her father couldn't afford to send her to a formal university. And in that university, they had to constantly move to avoid the Russians finding them. But she went on in 1893 to become a scientist and achieve a degree in physics. She achieved a mathematics degree in 1894, and it was that she posited some daring hypotheses that led to this statement. She posited that subatomic particles existed. She went against all the odds. The scientists ridiculed her. They told her she was wrong. They made fun of the fact that she was a woman trying to achieve something in this industry, and they were trying to make a fool of her. Her hypotheses ended up revising the entire understanding that the atom was actually not the most foundational element that we have today. She said, after all that she'd been through, I was taught that the way of progress is neither swift nor easy. It was Marie Curie who said all these things and achieved all these things. She was the first woman to achieve a Nobel Prize. She was the first person to achieve 2 Nobel Prizes, and she was the first person to achieve it in 2 different fields. It's taken a century, but we finally appreciate her as a multifaceted woman, someone who had uncommon intensity, she had courage, she had conviction of what she was doing, and for that we have years of scientific and medical discovery to thank for. So each of these stories that I've shared with you is really a depiction of Health Pitch's themes of efficiency, of developing, and of behavioral health. But there's something more behind this. Those of us who live in these communities, in this region, we see that the themes and the purpose of this event have something else behind it. And it's how we collaborate. It's the way that we work with one another. And the question I have is, how can we, as a community and as influencers, come together to work together, to keep together, and to stay together, and to nurture the innovators who are about to take the stage and talk to us about how they want to create a healthier world and to assure that the best days of this healthcare industry are ahead of us. So a key to answering that question, to me, lies in what was called the Rosetta Mystery. The Rosetta Mystery seemed to be about a virtual fountain of youth, but the first question you should ask is, who are the Rosettans? It was in eastern Pennsylvania, small town, 1,700 people. They had incredible health. They lived very long lives. They had zero, and I mean zero, crime. They had no record of ever asking for assistance from the governments or from their communities. And in the surrounding area, they had all the same criteria. They were drinking the same water. They were living in similar communities. they had similar jobs, and all that they did really didn't look like it contrasted with those that were around them. They were inhabitants that lived in a starkly healthier place. They seemed to be happy. And in a scene out of the movies, scientists descended on them. It was sanctioned by the federal and the state government. They wanted to know what was happening in this community. And they brought their instruments, they brought their questions, and it took years to discover what it was. They lived a life that was very different. They weren't eating Mediterranean diets. They were Italian-American immigrants, so you might expect that their diets would have had Mediterranean elements to it. But they fried their meatballs and their sausages in lard. They smoked Italian stogie cigars. The men worked in harsh conditions. They were in quarries, in mines and slave quarries, inhaling gases and dusts. And they drank with relative abandon. They didn't even think milk was that important, or the American sodas that had started to appear on the scene in 1962. But what was determined was that the answer was this: these people it was people nourishing people. That was their secret. They were doing everything else that everyone else was doing, but they had tightly knit communities. They were knit together as families and as colleagues, and they were sharing these things with each other. And it was that made them unique. And the only thing they died of was old age. Now, over the years, this faded, and American culture kind of infiltrated it, and it didn't last forever. But that idea of people nourishing people was very present at the time. This type of community, I don't think, is very far from our own. I think we're living in an environment where we're starting to see Rosetta-like effects that they saw early in their time. And we're becoming more famous not for the namesake of the movie that's named after this city, and not because of our seasonal flooding, but because of the way that people are coming together, the way we're collaborating, the perseverance of the individuals that work together and share with each other. Events like this, Health Pitch, 1 Million Cups, the kind of investment communities that are seen in Arthur Ventures, the 26 startup companies that are occurring here, the people that are going to be here today to share with you what's going on with them and with their ideas are part of those kinds of communities. And it's those kind of communities that we want to discover how we can nurture and help flourish. We shouldn't be surprised that Rosetta-like investigators are descending on our very own community. They want to find out what it is we're doing here. There's people who are investing great things in this community, and they're doing it in a way that's impacting events just like this and making them flourish. And I don't think some of my friends here today will mind if I borrow a phrase that's being used. And instead of calling it the Rosetta mystery or the Rosetta effect, I think we can call it the emerging Prairie Effect. It's something that we all can be a part of, and in many cases, as I look around this room, I see people who are a part of it every single day. The individuals who are about to speak have some of the same qualities as the historical figures that I shared with you today. They adapt, they innovate, they persist, and at times they even choose to be unconventional when it's necessary. They never give up, and they learn how to nurture one another without having to compete with one another. So, in the words of Henry Ford, coming together is the beginning, keeping together is progress, and working together is success. So let's draw our attention in this time to these passionate speakers and these disruptive innovators, and let's think, how can we as a community come together, keep together, and work together to see success realized for these individuals and the passions that they're sharing with us and wanting to pursue? I know it's true the best days of healthcare are ahead of us, and I also know the best days of this emerging prairie are ahead of us as well. Thank you for being here, and I hope you enjoy their time. Thank you and enjoy.